is here to discuss what it takes to create the best physique in the world. Hany has trained 13 Olympia title winners and the Mr. Olympia winner every year since 2009 and trained 3 Olympia winners in 2014 alone. This seminar is brought to you courtesy of Evagen Nutrition. Be sure to check out their booth. They are number 922. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please welcome Hany Rambod.
How's everybody doing? You know, thanks for coming out. This LA Expo has gotten so big, and it's crazy because I remember the first year we had it, we had the Ironman Pro with it, and it was just kind of like a quarter of the size, and now it's becoming almost like the Arnold Classic. It's gotten so big. So hopefully everybody's enjoying themselves, getting some samples, getting some products, and being able to get, you know, the latest information on what's going on out there. But you know, normally I have hours and hours to be able to do Q&As, and today I'm able to do some things. I think we got about a half an hour. And what I would like to do is just talk a little bit about kind of what I do, who I am. You know, obviously, there's a great introduction. You know, I have won 13 Olympia titles in women's, including women's physique, 2 with Nicole Wilkins, 2 with Jenny Lynn. You know, Jeremy Buendia, who's actually running around, one of the sponsors. He was unfortunately not able to make it because he got double booked. And then as well as being able to work with NFL athletes, a couple of them, one of them might be here, Vernon Davis, running around from the San Francisco 49ers that I work with, as well as Olympic athletes. So if you have questions, I like to keep this really informal. And we have an extra set of a microphone.
Yeah, I'll find you.
As you know, I created the FST7 training system. So whether it's training related, nutrition related, I like to talk a little bit about everything. So what I want to do is start off with questions. If you follow me on Instagram, Facebook, you'll see that obviously I have worked with Jacob Garfield, you know, multiple athletes through a lot of physique, as well as Olympic athletes as well. But I got my start many years ago as a natural bodybuilder, and I did my last show in 1999. Actually, the show that's called the Ironman Naturally here was my last show in 1999, and then I blew my knee out, and then I became a trainer exclusively at that point. For 13 years, I didn't have an ACL in my right leg, so it kind of like, I feel like a higher power basically told me, you know what, you have limited genetics, focus on training people and try to make champions because you're going to only go so far. And at that point, what I did was start working with the California state champion in 2000. 2001 was my first USA champion overall, Quincy Taylor. 2002, I had the USA overall champion, Idris Wardell. 2003, I had Chris Cook win the USA. So I just kept winning. And then I just kept becoming a trainer. I mean, decided that I was doing that exclusively, as well as designing supplements. So I was doing consulting for companies like BSN, and I'm sure everyone's heard of NO Explode and BSN. And then now I started my own line about 5 years ago, which was Evagen. So we were at booth 922, and you guys are going to be lucky enough to be able to get samples. So if you guys want to try anything, I'm going to have a couple of my staff members come by, drop off some samples of my pre-workouts and my products. So if you want to try them out, just let them know and they'll give them to you. But what we're doing is really focusing on being able to, you know, educate out there. Very similar style to like a Jim Stefani, where we're trying to educate as well as being able to tell exactly why we put what we put in the products. But does anybody here has heard of FST7 training? Okay, awesome. So about a third of the crowd. Awesome. Well, let's start off with just some questions. You want to go ahead and... You guys look familiar.
All right. Well, I have 2 questions, but one of the questions is, for a figure competitor, what would you suggest is the best macro breakdown for on-season versus off-season?
You know, that's a good question. When it comes to whether it's a figure competitor or a bodybuilder or a fitness competitor, you know, I work with all the cycles. So what I do is I take the person's individual metabolism into account. Obviously their age, their metabolism, and how they work well or not well with carbohydrates and fats. So everyone tends to do well with proteins. It's just a matter of designing. I not only carb cycle, but I also fat cycle. So a lot of people go, oh, carb cycle or keto or whatever. What I do is I find what's best for that client by seeing where the metabolism is, how much they're working out, how much cardio. You know, when I used to compete, it was really hard for me to get lean, but it was very, very easy to me to get big. So, and then they have people who have the opposite problem. So someone like myself, I would turn around and work with myself. If they had a problem with getting leaner, I would really watch the carbohydrate intake and do carb cycling. If it was somebody who had a fast metabolism, like your daughter, she's got a fast metabolism, she can eat higher amounts of macros in terms of carbs. So, and then if that's not enough, then we got to start adding in more fats, because the calorie dense fats, that really works. But everybody, the way I do things is not cookie cutter. What I do is I take the person's metabolism, their age, their gender, how much work they do, versus like if they're in the office and they're not burning a lot of calories, I really design a program around what their lifestyle is like. So a bigger competitor like your daughter, which I've met, she would be a lot higher with the macros, with the carbs and the fats, than somebody who's maybe 35 and trying to get into shape. So again, it all depends highly on the exact person you're dealing with, and if they've been doing things to stay in shape. Because if they haven't, sometimes you need to kickstart that metabolism. So a lot of people are getting into fasting, a lot of people are going paleo, and you need to figure out what's right for you when it comes to these diets. So it's all very individual. You gained a lot of muscle though. Second question.
Who else has a question, folks? All right.
Hey, first row.
I'm training for my first figure show, and I'm moving from a building phase into now a pre-contest and cutting. My biggest concern is losing muscle while I'm leaning out. Are there any one or two key, idealisms that you follow to go through that process and not sacrifice muscle?
Yeah, very good question. The question, if you didn't hear it, was how do you not burn off muscle while you're trying to diet down? So number one is you want to make sure your protein is high. And when I say high, it's usually 1 gram. I usually shoot for about 1 gram per pound of lean body weight. So not just body weight, but lean body weight. So that way, if your body fat is 35%, you're going with the lean, 1 gram per pound of lean. So that's the first thing. The second thing, make sure you don't make the mistake of going high reps. High reps with lower weight makes you smaller. It doesn't make you leaner. It just makes you shrink. And a lot of people end up making that mistake and just get smaller. So what you want to do, what's going to make you leaner is your diet and your cardio. So how much you bring in terms of calories and what you burn off in terms of cardio or training. But when you sit there and you turn around and you do those lighter weights, the muscles tend to shrink because there's no stimulus to keep the muscle fibers. So a lot of people make that mistake, especially their first show, and then they get in smaller and they get in softer, and they don't know why. So you need to keep your strength up. So if you keep your strength up, it's a really great indication. Dan Duchesne used to say that all the time too. Guru back in the day, 20 years ago. If you don't know who he is, you should look him up. And a stronger muscle is a bigger muscle. So what you really want to do is you really want to make sure you maintain as much of your strength as possible. So if you can do that while you're dieting, it indicates how much muscle you're holding on to. If you're a month out from a contest or a photo shoot and you're weak as shit, and you won't. Chances are your muscle is burning off your muscle. So keep your strength. What you want to do is let the cardio and the diet bring you in and dial in your conditioning. So that's the second most important thing. So the third most important thing is use supplements to augment that, to help you strengthen your body, so you minimize your muscle loss, to keep you stronger. So creatine's a great way of doing it. Branched chain amino acids, intra and post, work awesome. The whey isolates right after the workout, when you have that anabolic window of 30 minutes to be able to get those proteins in your system, that makes a big difference. And then make sure that you're eating 2 or 3 hours. There's a lot of things going on about this, like intermittent fasting and everything else. And the fasting can be very dangerous because if you're not getting protein within 3 hours of each other in terms of meals back to back, you're going to start losing muscle. And then you start getting weaker, and then that's what ends up happening is you start looking like crap because all of a sudden your metabolism slows down. So all of those things are important. Taking the supplements, making sure you train heavy, and making sure that you're getting your protein.
Another follow-up question right here.
What do you think is the ideal rep range for building muscle?
Okay, what's the ideal rep range for what?
For building muscle.
For building muscle? 8 to 10. 8 to 10 reps. So I like to be able to have my clients train 8 to 10 reps. Now, does that mean you can't do more? Yes. But the way you do more to increase intensity is drop sets after the 8 to 10, or you can do partials, where you do a partial movement, or you're doing forced reps. So somebody's helping you with your elbows, you're getting them through. So altogether, you might do 12 or 15 reps when you include those things. But where you want to go to failure is 8 to 10 reps to failure. Then you can do what I consider the intensity multiplier, which is the partials, the forced reps, negatives, all of those different kinds of techniques will help take your intensity to a whole nother level. And those little things at the last third of your set is what really dictates the difference between getting a good workout and having a phenomenal workout. And when you see my videos on FST7, YouTube, Muscular Development, whatever, Flex Magazine, when I do these workouts with Jay, Phil, whoever it is I'm training, what happens is you'll see the big difference of the last 3 to 4 reps. That's where you're getting the most gains. That intensity, where everything else, everybody shuts it down, that's where you're making the most gains. So 8 to 10, and then all the force reps after that.
Next question up here to your left.
Hey, how's it going? I had a question. When you're working out, should you do every set to failure, or should only be 1 or 2 sets be done to failure?
So the question is, do I do every set to failure? Okay, so no, I don't do every set to failure. What I do is, usually I do, the first exercise is usually 4 sets. Okay, so 1 to 2 warm-ups, and if it's a shoulder, then that doesn't even include like rotator cuff exercises and all of that. So 1 to 2 warm-up sets, and then usually 2 working sets, okay? And the working sets are going to be 8 to 10 reps. And if the first working set is really heavy and you're failing at like maybe 6 and not 8, then maybe go a little bit lighter for your last set. But let's say that you got 10 or 12 reps, and then you can go a little heavier for the second working sets. So on average, 2 warm-ups with 2 working sets. Now, if you're really warm and it's your second or third exercise, and let's say you're doing chest, now you're doing flies, it's your second exercise, then it'll do only 3 sets because you have 1 warm-up because you're already doing your presses before that, and then you're doing your second and your third set is your working sets. So you don't have to do 4 at that point. Answer your question?
I've got a quick follow-up question. Do you begin every different exercise with at least 1 warm-up set?
Yes, every exercise starts with at least 1 warm-up set, and every body part starts with at least 2 warm-up sets. So unless I have like an athlete that's like an NFL athlete that I know is working around an injury, then I might do 3 warm-up sets. So then what I'll do is if they have a shoulder problem, or let's say they have like a hamstring tear, or they're coming back from like a pull, then I'm going to warm them up 3, 4, 5 sets just to make sure that we're getting blood in there before we're doing leg press, hack squats, whatever else that we're doing. But for the most part, if you're 100% ready to train, first exercise is 2 warm-up sets, and then any exercise after that, 1, and then 2 working sets after that.
Thank you. Another question right here.
So you're known as one of the best compared to like George Foreman and Charles Glass. What makes you so different and what makes you the Olympians as opposed to other countries? What makes you different in that sense?
Okay, all I heard was George Foreman and Charles Glass.
The question was, what makes you stand out compared to every other trainer? What is it about your training methods that have produced champions?
I think it's a couple things. I think the difference is that number 1, I was a natural bodybuilder my whole life. I competed naturally. So everything that I design is around training. So you can have the best supplement program in the world, you can have the best, diet in the world, but the number 1 thing that you need to do is train hard, and you got to train right. So that my whole program is built around training, where Charles probably is mostly all training, but he doesn't go over supplements and nutrition so much. And then George doesn't really do any training; he's really supplements and diet. And so at the end of the day, my thing is that you have to be able to be good at every portion of the prep. So whether it's training is the number 1 thing that you got to be really good at. Number 2 is diet. And number 3 is supplements. So what sets me apart is that I try to really master every aspect of it. Not just say, I'm really good at one thing. I try to be phenomenal at all of them. And when it comes to supplements, not only do I want to be good at it, I want to be so good at it that I can design them. And that's what I've been doing for the last 20 years. I've been designing supplements for my athletes. Then the last 5 years, I've been putting a label on it and calling it a company. But that's why I try to make sure that everything that I do stands out in terms of every category of preparation, whether it's diet, training, nutrition. Because when you're doing online training, you don't know how good the client is following the training program. You send them a diet, you send them a supplement program, but you don't know how hard their intensity is. What makes them understand what the training is. That's why I started doing the FSD7 program, and I started doing videos. And with my clients, I even make them do videos of their weak body parts so I can review them just like if I'm there. Who else does that? Nobody. I'll sit there and watch their workouts and say, your form is shitty on your squat. Your knees are going too far forward. Go back into it. Get into the hole. Do this. And then I'll sit there and critique it on a video and then give them the notes back either on the phone or via email. So those are the things that sets me apart. And I don't work with as many people. I work with less people, but put more into it.
Next question is right here to your right.
In reference to warm-up sets, what's the recommended resistance level relative to
That's really dependent on the person. Usually what I like to say is, if I had to write a book and I was sitting down breaking it down, I would say you're going to be doing 40 to 50% of your maximum. So if you're normally doing a 100-pound press, you're starting off 40s or 50s. It should be your first set. So as a percentage, 40 to 50% of what your maximum set will be for those 8 reps should be done as a warm-up. So again, if you're doing a dumbbell incline press and you normally top out at 100 for 8 reps, then I would start my client out at 40 to 50 and then work my way up to 60 or 70, and then the last 2 sets, working sets, would be 80 and then jump up to 100s for 8s.
Next question, right side of the aisle.
Regarding building lean muscle mass on females, do you go by 1 gram per pound of lean body mass for protein, or do you believe in like 1.15, 1.25, or even higher?
It depends on body fat. So what I do is, if their body fat tends to be higher, then what I might do is actually have their protein a little bit lower. And then what I do is, as their metabolism starts to pick up, then I protein cycle as well. So what I'll do is I'll start adding protein. I was talking to one of my clients in Australia. She's getting ready for the Arnold Classic and bigger. And her name is Amanda Doherty. And Amanda has like 3 or 4 kids, and she's older, and her metabolism is going so fast that I took her from 4 ounces of protein per meal 7 times to now she's up to 6 ounces of protein, because her metabolism, and she is shredded. If you go to her Instagram, you'll start seeing lines in her butt, and it's because her metabolism is on fire. So as she's getting leaner and her metabolism, her needs change, then I increase the proteins, and then I start putting in salmon, the fattier fish. I start putting in red meat because I need to be able to keep throwing fuel on fire to keep it going. A lot of people do wrong is they'll keep their carbs and their proteins the same and keep doing what they're doing and slowing their metabolism down. And by doing that, all you're doing is you're going to create a plateau for yourself. So you need to be dynamic and you need to change it.
Next question is aisle left.
What would you say is the most optimal split for a natural athlete?
It depends on your recovery level. My personal recovery was really bad. It was just, I had really a lot of delayed onset muscle soreness. So I would turn around and do legs. I would do once a week because it took me 5 days to get legs to basically my soreness to go away. But with the smaller body parts, like my bis and my tris, I would train them by themselves, and then I would train them again with the major body part. So I would do sometimes chest and tris or chest and bis, and then I would do shoulders and an arm movement. And then back I like to train by itself because it was such a big body part that I would be so tired that I wouldn't be able to really get a good arm workout, because a lot of people do back and bis. But if you do a really good back workout, you're pretty fried. It's really hard to do bis really well, especially if you needed to bring up your arms. Now if you're Phil Heath, it's different because he barely trains his arms, because his arms would get so big that we literally would have to tell him to chill, don't train your arm until 3 weeks out from the show, because it'll disproportionately throw his body off and it would make him look completely like, that's what gives him that narrow look, because his arms are so big. But for someone like you, if you're training naturally, what you gotta do is you gotta see exactly how many days it takes for your body to get rid of the soreness. And if you're really taking a long time, make sure you go over your diet, your supplements, make sure you dial that in, make sure you're taking enough protein, branch chain, sleeping enough, hydrating enough, all of those things. But to answer the question, small body part parts twice a week, and then the big body parts every 5 to 7 days.
All right, next question is right here. Second to last question. We got time for one more following this question.
Hey, Hany, what's your strategy for water depletion leading up to the show?
You know, it really depends on the person. If I've got somebody who's really in shape, I don't usually have to do too much manipulating because they're so conditioned early. So if they're really lean, my key goal is to always try to get my athletes lean and dry way ahead of time. So I only have to turn around and taper water. And usually the way I taper water is starting on Wednesday. If I'm doing like 1.5 gallons or 2 gallons, I'll cut it on Thursday to half of whatever that was, and then on Friday another half. And then the night before the show, then I cut the water down to sips. So it's usually by halves starting on Wednesday, but sometimes if it's somebody who's really, really lean, I'll keep the water in there longer because they can handle it because they'll dehydrate too fast if I end up using the protocol I just told you about. But if I had to sit down and tell you, hey, you know, I don't know your body, I don't know what's going on, it'd usually be halves starting on Wednesday.
All right, final question right here.
For somebody that has a very active lifestyle and burns so many calories throughout the day, what's the easiest way, carbs, macronutrient style, to really put on that lean muscle and keep the muscle in general? If you're just active so much times throughout the day.
So what's your problem? You're not getting enough food, or?
I mean, I'm trying to get as much food as possible, but I'm a personal trainer from 3 a.m. till 10, and then I go play basketball, and then I go start a league. I mean, do I just gotta chill out on the cardio, or?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. You gotta chill out on the cardio, but what you gotta do too is you gotta create those little 15-minute segments of time where you can sit down and eat. Okay, it's that simple. And you can't just rely on shakes. Like everybody wants to rely on shakes and they want to know why they look like shit. You really need to be able to have food. Shakes are great, but they're a supplement. They're there to supplement your program and your diet. Don't replace them. So what I would do would take oatmeal, egg whites, some protein powder, make protein pancakes, because you want stuff that's really, really easy to be able to get down, that doesn't take a lot of time to prepare food-wise. So I would do protein pancakes, like what I just told you. And then what I would also do is make sure that I have stuff that's really, really easy to eat. Like potatoes are a lot easier to eat than rice. So being able to break those up and make them into little squares, and then be able to eat those, you know, because after you cook them, you can turn around and you can dry roast them in the oven, and you can literally eat them by hand. You know, I was a personal trainer for many, many years, and obviously I don't sit there and train people all day long anymore, only my select athletes. But at the end of the day, it's all about convenience. So what you want to do is you want to take your beef and your chicken, put it in a baggie, make sure you have another baggie with your carbs in it, and make sure that they're easy to eat. Sitting there with a fork and chopsticks eating rice is not easy, bro. You need something quick and easy, gives you 15 minutes to eat, and go on to your next client. Yeah, you can try that. I mean, just be careful. Don't do too much of that. You're talking about the food processor? Yeah, you got to be careful with that. You want your body to be able to digest the food. So I wouldn't rely too much on using food processors too much.
All right, well, unfortunately, that's all we have time for at this time. But so, ladies and gentlemen, the LA FitExpo 2015, one more time, please make some noise for Hany Rambod.